Welcome to United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America on WSGW. Now, here is your host, Kareem Bowen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of United Shades of Gray, Conversations of Race in America. Today, we are in the studio with the whole crew. We got Mark Bassett. If you're looking via social media, you'll see him on the other side of the screen. Mark, give him a shout out.
Hey, how's it going today?
He's all the way here in sunny Michigan. Now we can say that
it hasn't been sunny since I've been here.
Well, we had one day of sunshine last week, Mark, so that counts. And also in the studio is our producer, John B, in the place to be. What's good, John?
Hello.
All right, so today we have a very good conversation, and we're going to just jump right into it because there is really going to be, I think, a lot of interest in this context, this conversation that we're going to have. We're going to talk about the unsettled borders that we have here in the United States. We're going to talk immigration, protests, and the American identity. Pulling that all into a conversation, we're going to solve the world's problems in this next hour. And you all are going to be great. Put an S on our backs, on our chests, and a cape on our backs, and we're off. But we just like to thank you guys for continually listening. For those of you who listen to WWF. We're wrestling now. WSGW.
That's old, man. It's WWE now. Come on.
I never understood what the difference was. We went to
They
East
went
to West,
to
West
when
to
they
East.
went to WWE. They were acknowledging it was fake. It was entertainment, not actual
wrestling.
Yeah.
Worldwide wrestling.
World Wrestling Entertainment.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
So we're here on WSGW 100.5 FM at 790 AM. For those of you who are listening, thank you for tuning in to Alpha Media with this great show here and the other shows in the programming that takes place on our stations. We're going to get into our conversation today. I just want to kind of preface what we're going to talk about as we dive into this very complex issue. First of all, by just, welcoming everybody to the show and understanding that we're getting ready to step into a whirlwind conversation. There's a storm that is brewing, a storm of a debate, a storm of emotions often arise in this particular situation because people have these deeply seated thoughts and ideas that come to mind when we talk about the border crisis. For some, it is a matter of law. Others, it's a national sovereignty. It's a right for us to control our borders. But however you might find yourself feeling or where you find yourself in the spectrum of those beliefs, we want you to take a deep breath. As my sister Yvonne Daniels would say, relax, relate, release, and let's come to the table and have a good conversation. In addition to the crisis at the border that has always been a political hotbed, we are now seeing politics being injected and things taking place as it relates to these, creating a dynamic which the American right to protest has now shown its head. We see demonstrations demanding stricter enforcement. We see demonstrations saying secure the border. We see clear messaging that America is closed. But then on the other side of that spectrum, we see other individuals who really have a desire to have more compassion and empathy, forming more ways to citizenship, which I don't ever think is the issue of conversation, but it's the fact that individuals are here illegally, quote unquote, I say. But underneath this surface of these policy debates and the passionate demonstrations that we see taking place, I need to ask myself, is there a deeper current running through it all? And I'm talking about race. So how does our understanding of race, our history of migration from other countries to this one, our evolving national identity, which is continually being shaped, how does all of this play a part in our conversation? And that is what we're going to explore on today. And I'm just going to start off. So when we talk about this new thing about our borders, this has been a long-standing issue. Mark, how long would you say that we've been arguing since America's been a country?
Maybe
not so much.
No. I mean, I think it's been a hotter topic, I'd say, over the last decade or so.
Okay. Yeah. So over the decade, would you say just a decade, Mark?
Jonathan,
I'm talking about, would you say just a decade?
I don't think it was a big deal during the Bushes or Clinton.
Okay.
Maybe during Obama. I don't remember.
No, definitely during Obama.
Okay, so Obama.
Yeah.
Maybe. Then you had who was after Obama? Oh my God. I'm drawing a blank.
Remember, he thought that lady was going to win.
But
she didn't do it.
Yeah, obviously during Trump's first term, during Biden's, and then this term. So it's been So at least 3, so
Okay.
12 to 15 years.
What do you
probably.
think is why the reason all of a sudden? Because there has been a continual flow and influx of folks coming across the border. Do you think there is a reason as to why all of a sudden this is the issue?
I mean, this is an issue I haven't spent a lot of time on it. I tend to think a lot of it's about politics.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't get a chance to look at all the statistics. Has
Right.
there been an uptick in the flow of illegal immigration in this country over the last 15 years? The answer is probably yes. Has it, did it go even higher during the Biden administration? Probably yes. And I think a lot of things can be true here. So do I think most Americans believe, hey, we have a legal path to citizenship here and people should follow it? I think the majority of Americans think yes. But the reverse can also be true. Do a lot of Americans think what we're doing right now in terms of trying to enforce that and go after any and every illegal immigrant is the right way to handle it? The answer to that could be no.
So, Jonathan, what are your thoughts? I know you're younger, but you are very astute and aware of what's happening and have a great world perspective. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are. Do you all mind sharing where you all stand in this whole complexity?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I would like to.
Let me start.
Go ahead. Why don't you start?
Yeah, I do believe in, hey, we have laws in which to become a legal citizen, and we should do our best to go by those laws.
Okay.
And if we need better laws to be more inclusive, given kind of how things have changed in the world, then we need to work on passing new laws. Having said that, in addition, I'm all for going after especially violent criminals, lifelong criminals that are here illegally. I think no doubt that we should go after those people who have been here illegally for 20 or 30 years, that are hardworking people in this country, that frankly, if you've been to a lot of these cities, underpin some of the lower paying jobs that keep cities going. Do I think we should be going into businesses like that and rounding up illegal aliens and deporting them? No, I don't think we should be doing that. I think that's a bad use of resources.
Okay, awesome. Jonathan.
I'm in kind of a similar situation as Mark. I think it's important to throw the caveat on there of, if we're going to make new laws, we should make new laws. I don't like that each administration in the executive branch gets to impose their own enforcement, and that's really the only policy that
we've seen
really gets gets any sort of enforcement.
Running by executive order. I mean, this is the issue with running by executive order.
Well, and it's
every
not
4 years you potentially go in literally a diametrically different direction, and that's just not how you can effectively run a country.
And it's not just executive orders, but those immigration enforcement is under the executive branch, so they're under that authority. So that's going to swing with the administration, but it should be there should be more direct policy from Congress, I think. But when it comes to how we're enforcing that stuff now, I think when Trump first came out with a plan, and I think he has since departed from this plan, but I liked how it began, which was, we are going to go after criminal history first. That is our top priority, then criminal history in other countries, then how long have you been, working through the list that way. I think that's kind of the right way to attack it. But if you enter the country illegally, you have broken a law. And we are a country with borders. We are a country of laws. You have broken a law. And I understand trying to find a better life because people obviously want to be here. But again, it comes down to pass laws to expand access to citizenship, and that I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So I think we need to enforce the laws we have.
Yeah, and the reality is Congress, my personal view, is largely ineffective because they can never agree on anything. And so waiting for Congress to step up and try to, as a coalition, find a compromise solution, I think is unlikely given the state of where Congress is. So,
well, it's interesting. I have a whole bunch of thoughts on this. And as we talk about, we consider that this is a nation of migrants or immigrants that have come here from all over the world.
I take issue with that to a certain degree, but continue.
I think we are a nation of immigrants. That's the facts. The folks that are here are from other places that have created this union. Whether you got here, however you got here, it is a union of people from different places. And I understand and I believe that there is a need for a strong border. We cannot have a situation in which, folks come here and are part of the American dream and that they exclude other people from having that same opportunity or that same process of inclusion. I do, however, this is a very complex issue, especially when we start, when we are able to isolate and we say this criminal, it makes it very easy. But when we look at the complex issues that surround this concept of immigration or the idea of it, and understanding that families are tied to this and children are tied to this, and folks have been here for a very long time, that we now go out and seek after for crimes when our government brings people to our country who have committed crimes for whatever purpose. It makes it convolutes and it pollutes the water. How do you think when we look at what we're dealing with, how do we handle this situation? We've had a number of, as you said, executive orders that have started off with folks who are supposed to be criminal, those murderers, rapists, Mexicans that were out there, according to our current president, that were coming over to kill everybody and steal Black people's jobs, which I'm still confused by what he means by that. How do we deal with, as you said, Jonathan, there was a plan that was out there, but now there seems to be a shifting.
One could articulate the plan.
What the plan is now. Yeah. So now we've gone.
Because go ahead. Originally it was, as Jonathan said, I think pretty specific, and people could, generally speaking, support that. Now we've gone into these mass raids where they're, just going into a place of employment and rounding everybody up. And, some of these guys are losing a good chunk of the workers that have been there literally decades. And then, there was word where we're going to back off raiding, hotels, right, motels, farms.
Now that's the thing that's interesting, Mark, as you say that.
Yeah.
Number 47 and 45 and 47, he's the first. He can be both at the same time. But anyways, he made the exception. Yeah, I don't think we're going to go after farmers or folks who work in the hotel restaurant industries. How do we do that?
Well, you just choose not to raid them.
I mean, I get that.
Yeah. But then they've flipped it again. Now they've said, no, we're going to do that. Now, this is my issue with this administration, where there's doesn't appear to be a clearly articulated plan that's adhered to. It tends to be, yes, we are, no, we aren't, yes, we are, no, we aren't, no, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. And when you have a constantly changing, pretty significantly changed plans, it just yields chaos and confusion.
And talk about it. All right. So when we look at this, and it's interesting because when we talk about immigration, what comes to mind? What group of people come to mind?
Well, recently, recently, it's largely Hispanic.
Do you think it's recently, or to me, that's always kind of the image that is conjured when we talk about immigration?
I don't know if you're talking over the history of the country. Well, obviously, there was the urban.
Jonathan and I are too young for that that other conversation, Mark. So.
I would say in the last few decades, it's largely, Hispanic, Central and Latin America.
Right.
Yeah.
So those French Canadians.
Yeah.
They're coming across the Ambassador Bridge. You better watch them.
You did have an immigration from Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Vietnam after the fall of Cambodia and Vietnam. And so you had an immigration from Southeast Asia in the 70s. But in the last few decades, it's largely south of the border.
When we look at it, is there a difference in how these immigrations, as you said it, referred to it, these populations, do you think that we handle them differently based upon where they come from in the region? Do you see a difference in how they're being handled?
I think there's a difference, like when they get caught at the border or like otherwise. So when we talk about how ICE is handling them, how Border Patrol is handling them, I think it has a lot to do.
Just one second. I just want to make sure for those who are listening, who are saying he didn't say Latinos. Well, I said what our president said. He was talking specifically about those coming across the southern border.
Right.
So Latinos would not be necessarily inclusive. Of that entire population when he used the term Mexicans coming across the border. So I just wanted to make sure that understanding was clear. But go ahead, Jonathan.
I think when we talk about the legal handling of them, it has a lot to do with the numbers and the concentration in that area. So at the southern border, we're seeing the biggest numbers. So that's being handled a little bit differently, and that's where you see a lot of the complaints about possible civil rights abuses and things like that.
There's definitely, I don't see how you can argue there's not profiling going on.
Well, the reason I asked the question is because, let's be honest, in 2020 there's a lot of people that are coming across the southern border,
right?
Because it's such a vast border to come across, right? And so that conversation has to be seen in the understanding that is the easiest way in. Right. But there are other countries and nationalities that are coming across that border other than just Mexicans. There are Latino Americans,
Guatemalans, Nicaraguans, El Salvadorians. I mean,
and another little island out there called Haiti,
Dominican,
Dominican Republic, Haitians. And that's why I asked the question, Jonathan, is there a difference? And I want to get back to where you were before we cut you off, Jonathan, because we're so polite in our conversations, on what you were saying.
Oh, I guess I don't know. I think there is a different, when you say how we handle them, I think at the border, probably not.
Okay.
Within the country and how illegal immigrants are tracked down and targeted for deportation, I think there probably is. Because you talk about the targeting of certain industries and the people who tend to work in them.
And if you look at what's going on now, I don't think we've ever seen before what we're seeing right now. I mean, there's a massive attempt to go after large quantities of people who are here illegally.
Well, it reminds me of something in our past.
Yeah, and someone would have to show me. I'm not a historian.
I'm not talking this American past, but I'm talking about the world's past.
Well, you look at World War II and Japanese Americans.
That's exactly what I'm thinking about. That's exactly what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Those types of things, and to me, it really. It should give every American who believes in the Constitution, who believes in those Bill of Rights, who believes in the 14th Amendment, should give you pause to make sure that we are actually operating under the laws that actually govern us, versus moving based upon our thoughts, feelings, and our opinions.
Yeah, and I don't think, well, again, everybody can debate a point.
Absolutely.
To me, it seems pretty clear that this administration is pushing every boundary of every law to its fullest extent to see how far they can go to do certain things.
And of course, since this is Conversations of Race in America, I have to bring it back. Is there, because, and I say this because when we were looking at 2020 and everything, the unrest that was taking place, I remember, I believe it was 2020, a large group of Haitians that were coming across the border, and Texas and other folks, they secured the borders. They put them people on a plane. It didn't matter if they came across, made it to the other side, and they sent them back to Haiti.
Right.
We don't see that same type of thing happening and with other nationalities. Now, as we talk about immigration, it's important to understand that since Mexico is right next to us, they would have the largest number of people that are coming from their country, and also because of some of the issues that exist there with how their country is operated. But we also have to think, is there a reason? All of a sudden, especially with this second term, the second administration, that there's an underlying feeling. To me, it feels like there's an underlying feeling, because I talk about all the time about how there are so many attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion, that the idea of talking about underserved or minority or people of color, that those things are somehow outlawed in our federal language is really crazy to me when I look at another thing. And we're talking about immigration, but it plays into a greater narrative that I just want us to kind of take a look at. When I look at the idea of federal workers losing their jobs, 18%, I think it is, somewhere around there, of federal workers are African-American. We talked about that on Another Job. So there's a lot of folks, when Black folks couldn't get hired in corporations, they went to the federal government because there were fail safes and protections that were there. And now to see what's taking place on the border, the interesting thing to me, and you guys, I'm interested, we got 2.5 minutes left, is that the population that's being targeted in these raids, nearly 50% of this group of people were the people who voted to keep him in office. They were a targeted group of folks for their
vote.
The
woman that founded the Latinos in support of Trump,
Latinos
who's actually come out and kind of denounced. I mean, I think they supported again. Hey, we want you to go after illegal, criminals, violent criminals. I don't think they generally are anymore supporting this kind of mass roundup of people that are here illegally but may have been here a decade, 2 decades, and are just here with families working hard. So again, supporting the underlying economy of a lot of these cities, frankly. So,
and let's talk about that, because when we talk about the number of dollars, that the impact, economic impact that illegals have, we're looking at $4, $5, $50 billion that they pay in taxes each year. So there is a legitimate. I don't think most Americans think that illegals pay taxes.
I think the assumption is they don't, but the reality is they do. So
So there's
and if they're working for other company, they're paying into Social Security. They're
so there's that real question there, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at this, how do we frame this conversation to begin to talk about how we can come to some resolution? The world is going crazy as we see it. There are mass protests all over the place. There are very strong issues on both sides. Mark, where do you think we should draw this or begin this conversation?
Well, again, 1 minute. I think it's back to, trying to get Congress. I think the hard thing here is with the players involved in managing this. I just don't think that happens.
So I think I agree, because leadership isn't from behind up or bottom up. Leadership happens from top down.
Right. Ultimately, the Republican Party is controlled by Trump. We probably have to stop here and maybe we pick it up. So I can't see the clock.
We can pick it up, but don't worry about it. We can pick it up on the other side of this conversation. We want to get into the contextual understanding of what's taking place with these new raids, with this new challenges that we're having as we talk about securing the border and dealing with the craziness that's ensuing after. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more United Shades of Gray.
You're listening to United Shades of Gray on WSGW.
This is Kareem. We're back with more United Shades of Gray. Well, before the break, as we were sitting here, we're talking about all of the things that are going on in the world of immigration. We're talking about the unsettled borders, immigration, protests, and the American identity. And I really want to make sure that in this part of this, we talk about that piece of American identity. But Mark, before we were going to break, you were making a point. I don't know if you lost the point, but
I was going to say, ultimately, I think with the current players and the way Congress seems to work these days, I think it's difficult for me to envision it getting resolved. Because again, I think it requires leaders that are willing to work with people of different opinions and find a solution that can fill the major needs of both sides of the point of view. And I've been very clear. I don't support Donald Trump, and I'm disappointed in the Republican, groups just falling behind him because he's in charge, and they feel that's their way to stay in power. At the same time, I think the Democrats are equally at fault here, because you got both parties screaming at each other and very few people willing to compromise. And so it comes back to, groups of people have to find ways to work together to find solutions that they can agree on to solve problems. And that just it's hard for me to envision that happening in the near future.
All right. So I want to kind of shift the narrative, and we want to talk historically, because there's another thing that's happening here, and we're going to talk about Blacks being involved in this fight for freedom. And as we look at what's taking place, is there a fear in your mind that this targeting of immigrants that was initially, hey, we're going after the criminals, to now we're going after all individuals who are illegal, as long as they don't interfere with our president's businesses.
As I saw the other day, none of his Florida properties have seemed to have been raided. So.
Not yet, right?
Not yet.
Yeah. Or does that cause you to any pause? We now have, reports of some people who are actually legally Americans, who have gone through the process also being deported. Does this give you a pause or a fear that this may open up to other opportunities of other groups of people being deported that should not necessarily be deported under what we consider to be an American?
I guess the answer would be yes. I think they're going after who they're going after because just the sheer numbers of it.
Okay.
I mean, the vast majority, I think, if you did this, statistics on it, of illegal aliens or illegal immigrants, are, from Mexico South. And so I think, just from the sheer numbers perspective, that's what you're seeing.
So when we talk about the browning of America, does that have any play in the passion for MAGA wanting those people out of the country?
I think that's kind of the danger I think that's more of an immediate danger than something down the line where this death ray is going to be turned towards somebody else. I think the more
black people, I'm not seeing that.
I don't see that happening.
No, I think the more immediate danger is kind of what we saw after 9/11, where immigrants from the Middle East there was prejudice against them.
Muslim bans, things of that nature.
You see videos all the time now on social media of like ICE or police stopping people because they look a certain way or they sound a certain way.
It's profiling.
It's
like being a black man in New York. It's profiling.
And I don't even mean in the structures of like policing or law enforcement. I mean just day-to-day interactions.
Interactions with everyday people who are afraid is much more dangerous than interactions with law enforcement because they go based upon their fears. And we understand that the root of all anger is fear. And so we see all of this outrage over things that doesn't make a difference. But the reason I ask, is there
this is where I just hate the rhetoric. Again, this is one of the issues I have with Donald Trump is the rhetoric he uses. And so taking anecdotal examples of like this illegal immigrant killed somebody is like, you see all immigrants are evil. I mean, it's just so preposterous, and because if you look at the statistics, how many American citizens kill people and what's the percentage of American citizens that kill people versus illegal immigrants that kill people, and people take these horrible anecdotal examples and vilify all immigrants.
If anybody's tired of that, Mark, I am.
And it's the rhetoric and the divisiveness of that rhetoric that I find really toxic and dangerous.
Contributing to that as well, though, is we've talked about a biased media representing things as though it is World War II and Mexican Americans are being rounded up and put in concentration camps like Japanese Americans.
Well, I'm going to say
you got the reverse as well. Portraying Los Angeles is like it's World War II.
Yeah, it's World War II.
Exactly.
But I'm going to say this, Jonathan. If I were a Hispanic, Latino, any of those things, I would have concern, especially in border states, because I mean, how many times do we get it wrong? How many times is the intel that we have wrong? How many times do we hit the wrong description of the individual, and it causes us to make mistakes? And so if I were of Latino or Hispanic, Chicano descent, whichever term you best qualify or relate to, I would have a concern, especially if I were on a border state.
Well, I just saw a news article the other day where two Hispanic Latin American or Hispanic National Guardsmen took their mother to the immigration office because they've been arresting people as they come out of the immigration office if they didn't get the decision they wanted. They've been arresting them as they literally walk outside the door of the immigration. And so these guys went with their mom to make sure that try to make sure that didn't happen.
What do we think about getting the information from our federal agencies on things like DHS, their information from those who receive immediate benefits, SNAP benefits, tell you have to have an address in order to receive those kinds of emergency. How do we feel about using federal agencies to get that information and to push information out there for this purpose?
Well, again, ultimately, it's how any piece of information is used. So if we're going to give people benefits, I do think they should have an address, and we should make sure it's not fraud. I mean, that's the issue with information. It can be used for whatever purpose you want, and that's kind of back to like, well, what are our laws, and how are they being implemented, and is this a fair or just way to treat people, or a fair, just way to use our resources?
Okay. I don't know how informed or tuned you guys are to the conversations that have been happening regarding the protests. But what I have known and what's been talked about in the village and at the barbershops and the beauty salons is, I had some friends and folks that were saying, hey, they're asking where the Black people at in this protest. Like, they're marching and they're protesting for rights, and they're part.
You mean the Latin people?
Yeah. Are asking like, where the Black folks at? Where my brothers and sisters at? Where my people? It's kind of interesting as we look at what's taking place. Do you find it interesting that individuals that are very popular and millions of people follow, like Louis Farrakhan, who is a part of the Nation of Islam movement, Muslim movement, he's kind of distanced himself from the nation. Them saying, hey, Black people, this is not our fight. Do you understand why African Americans might take that stand contextually?
Am I the right person to ask? We should be asking you that question.
No, I'm going to,
of course, share my thoughts. I'm a little surprised that they wouldn't.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I would think they understand what they're going through and would have empathy for that and want to support that. So that's what I would think.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Jonathan? Curious.
I think there probably is reason for it in we struggled through this. We went through this. We fought for this. And now you're just going to come in and take it for free.
There's a lot. Wow. You did pretty good, Jonathan. And I say this, I definitely don't enjoy or agree with what's taking place at the borders. I believe that there's this whole thing when we look at the 14th Amendment, which kind of tells us what an American is. And if we go and we took a look at the 14th Amendment, a part of that conversation says that any person born on American soil is an American, right? That is who this is to. And it doesn't say any United States of America. It talks about these rights are for any person, not any American, not any immigrant, but any person. So I believe that there is a constitutional basis for those who are born in this country, whether your parents were illegal or not. That is not a part of the conversation. What I will also say about this, and I think that this is where the bulk of America is, and I hope my brothers, Latino, Chicano, Hispanic folk are out there listening and having an understanding ear of what we're saying. This is not our fight. We fought we've been fighting since we've been here. But the fight of civil rights, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, when we look at the 14th Amendment, there was a specific reason for the 14th Amendment. Does anybody know what group of people were targeted for the 14th Amendment? It was African American and those who were descendants of slaves. The 14th Amendment, the purpose of it was to free and to end slavery for African Americans. Now, what has happened with that particular stance, as we look at immigration, and has happened with a lot of the other movements that have happened. I always say that the civil rights movements that Blacks start, the Blacks go through, have opened doors for everyone to come through. Immediately after Blacks, it was then white women and them getting their equal rights. Then after white women, it was Hispanic Americans, to get their opportunities. Then LGBTQ plus communities. And so everyone has benefited from the work that Blacks have done, the fight that Blacks have done, the blood, sweat, and tears. And the problem is this: there's this thing called whiteness that is really a fictional thing. It is a social thing that we talk about that comes into play. And when many of our folks who have come here from other countries, and like I said, I don't agree with the mistreatment of anybody, regardless of their race or any of the things that we've just outlined. But there is an understanding that is very clear that our brown communities have purported, and they've shown us. We were very afraid that if certain people were elected, that things such as DEI, such as equality, such as the things that we've been fighting for the past 40 years would be under attack. That was not their concern. And so now they're reaping the rewards of something that they voted for. I understand
what you're saying.
I'm gonna be very clear. Give me 1 second to finish this up. So my thing is, we fought for all of these rights that they've benefited for. We fought for equality and education and in pay and all of those things. And they've walked through those doors that we've kicked down. But when they got here, instead of staying with the people who have fought to give them these same privileges, they began to defer to this idea of whiteness and assimilation to a culture and to a people who did not necessarily agree with them until it was for a vote. That's my opinion. And so now to ask for Black folks who have fought their whole life while they were here to jump into a fight that you helped to create by the power of your vote is really kind of an interesting thing to do for me.
So I just want to make sure I understand your logic. Basically, you're in essence saying, I think, and so correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'll correct you if you're wrong.
That a large percentage of Latinos voted, or Hispanic voted for Trump, and this is what you got, and not nearly as many Black people voted for Trump.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because we understood the context of this election. And I say that, Mark, because when we look at immigration, if immigration were the same across the border, and I don't think, and I believe that race plays a factor. I feel that because
while you're talking, I'm trying to look up the statistics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I believe that when we look at the people coming from across the border, they have been vilified as being these angry, mean, crazy murderers, and the terms, all of the things that they've said. And I didn't understand, because I'm going to say this, I am a Black man. And so I understand that regardless of how I see myself economically, that at the end of the day, when it comes to people seeing me, they see me as a Black man. So what you see as the young Black man that be walking with his pants hanging around his ankles,
right?
Unfortunately, because we happen to be the same color, we are sometimes lumped in that same population. So it was difficult for me to understand how so many, 48% in some, 45%.
I've seen a wide selection, but around a little less than 50%.
Yeah, just under 50%. When you look at those who voted for Donald Trump from the Black community, they tout these numbers. Oh, Blacks are voting. Well, you know what? 85 to like 90% of Black women voted for the other candidate. Black men, maybe you got 15%. That's still about 85%. Black women, maybe 95, because it was such a difference. And so across the spectrum, age, race, we pretty much largely said, listen, this is not good for the pushing forward of America. And we understood that immigration and what is an American was also a part of the conversation and also at stake. But yet I remember having so many conversations with my Hispanic brothers and sisters that were saying, oh, we're voting for Donald Trump because he's going to get the border under control. Now their cousins are being taken away, and somehow they're confused by this argument. So what did you come up with numbers? Did you find anything, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the Hispanic in the mid 40s. I was just looking for Black women. It was 90%.
Yeah.
Trump 7 or 10%. I'm looking for Black men. I
think Black men were probably about 85. I think he did about 15%. And so when we look at that, this really is not our fight. Now, this is what I'm going to say. I think there is going to be a time for solidarity in terms of how we deal with these issues at the border, because a threat to justice anywhere is truly a threat to justice everywhere, as Dr. MLK said. And I think that there has to be a real conversation about immigration between Black and brown communities. How do we view this? What does it mean? How do we stand in solidarity? We can't stand in solidarity, and then when it's good, you jump ship off of this coalition, which has been one of the greatest coalitions.
Well, has there ever been a coalition?
There has been. Okay. There has been a strong coalition.
All right.
As we were knocking down those doors, they stood with us because they realized that in order for us to get the freedom that these Blacks have had, that we have to stand in solidarity.
Yeah.
And so there was a strong coalition. And I'm not saying that coalition is destroyed, because many people who understand how America works understands that coalitions and coalition building is central. When you're doing anything, this, Mark.
Yep.
To get anything done, you've got to be able to work across the aisle. Is that not what we're complaining about as a talk with our government?
Yep.
Can you walk across the aisle and have a conversation? And so I think that's where we are. I think that many people in our Hispanic, Latino, Latinx communities are understanding that principle. But it's important for us to really say, hey, we've got to begin to come together and build a coalition that is of mutual trust and respect. So as we talk about this, is there a challenge, in your opinion, as to what we are doing with what's happening in immigration, with the raids and the protests, for defining what is an American? Do you see that being a part of this conversation?
Well, it should be, I think. Again, this gets back to our laws. again, I'm so cynical right now with the current environment. I have a hard time seeing that happen in the next 3 years, to be honest with you, personally.
What about you, Jonathan?
I think citizenship is pretty well defined.
But do you see that being a part of what we're looking at when we look at what makes an American American, how you become an American? Those ideas of due process, that the laws work for you if you're in this country. Do you see that being a part, being challenged by some of the things that we're seeing right now?
Well, I think they are being challenged. People are, there's going to be all sorts of court cases. I think this administration has made it clear they're going to keep doing what they're going to do until the Supreme Court says you can't, and then we'll see what happens, I guess.
It's not any different from previous administrations, though.
I think they're being, there's a way more suits. Again, I think this administration, I philosophically, I agree, Jonathan. I think, though, this administration is testing every rule, every law to its fullest extent, I personally believe.
And so, Mark, in the words of Frederick Douglass, understanding that power never concedes itself. Yep. Once these powers that we see, the MAGA party, I won't even put this on Republicans. Well, I will put it on Republicans because Republicans.
I don't see how you can't.
Yeah, they're being quiet and so
they're lining up behind it.
So they're being implicitly complicit. Yeah. So that means that they are agreeing with what's going on.
I'm a registered Republican, so
take a good look at that guy over there. No, I'm just joking. But when we look at this, Mark, and we look at the fact that power never concedes itself. Once that office, that position has tampered and dabbled in this authority, do we see the next administration saying, hey, let's kind of resettle, recenter, or what do you think?
I think it depends on who it is. That's always the issue when it's a slippery slope when you start down a path, and if you challenge the status quo way of doing things and you win, then the next guy who might be the other party, or the next person who might be the other party, can easily just flip the script and do the exact same thing. And that's what's kind of scary to me about this whole kind of situation we're in, where this is a bit of a slippery slope that, you can be whipsawing back and forth all the time. And again, I just don't think it's a stable way to operate a country like this.
When I think about that, one of the other things, and someone put in one of our social media streams about quality of care in these situations. Mm-hmm. I was blown away 2 years ago, not this, a year ago from this past May, for Cinco de Mayo. And Jonathan, I think you were present. I think that they were touting somewhere like 10,000 people had flooded the community to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Am I correct? There were. I
don't recall.
There were thousands.
Yeah, thousands of people.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
How many people came in? And I worked with Larry Rodarte, who is also on a sister station. The name of the show is Mi Gente. And so I went down and, because I love my people, and we shared time on the air, and we were just blown away about how many people came to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. But with these new ICE raids and everything that's going on, it was literally almost a ghost town as the Cinco de Mayo parade went through. There were some people that were there and it was a celebration, but it was notably different than what it had been in the years past. So when we talk about healthcare and we talk about the impact, if we were to have a serious situation like they're having in Texas with the measles, people are hiding. People are afraid to go into hospitals to get care. People are afraid to report things to law enforcement. So these types of raids by ICE can put America in a very interesting place. When we look at people showing up for work,
or not showing up,
yeah, that's a better term. We look at the impact that it would have on the educational system with kids and teachers. We've got to begin to reconsider these things. I can't wait to bring one of my brown brothers and sisters in for this conversation. Hour goes by so fast. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week with United Shades of Gray.